Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there. Turn on the signal. It's time for yet another reboot of the Batman franchise. Join us as we discuss Matt Reeves' noirish take on the world's greatest detective, the Batman. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff, and Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Thank you so much for joining us each week and allowing us to come into your home, into your Alexa device, into your Spotify, into your earphones, wherever it is in your car. We're happy to be alongside with you. We certainly appreciate it. Don't we, Eric?
We do indeed. Hello,
Absolutely.
guys.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. We've got a special guest with us making his triumphant return from a month-long tour of duty doing Halloween-themed podcasts with us. Andrew Cremines. You can find him at Andrew Cremines Art on Instagram. Artist extraordinaire, has recently done some work for Metallica. He did a limited run of posters for them, which was a great call. It was for charity, right? It was for a charity. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was for it was celebrating their 40th anniversary as a band, and then they 100% of the proceeds of the ones that they sold on their website went to their charity, and they sold 500 in something like 58 seconds or something like that. They sold out in 58 seconds. It was like $50,000 for the charity in less than a minute. It was so overwhelmingly cool. And just to be part of that was just, they're my be all end all heroes. So just being part of something that was for them and charity as well. They help feed homeless people and hook people up with job insecurities, getting trade jobs and stuff, teaching people to be electricians and that sort of stuff. So it's a great, charity. It's called All Within My Hands Foundation. If you ever are interested, check it out. They're really, really cool, the amount of stuff that they do. And, Metallica are extremely generous and in philanthropy and stuff. And they just don't talk about it. They don't go advertising it all the time. You have to kind of look for it. But when you find out the numbers that they're given to the charity and stuff, it's just unbelievably cool. So it was great.
And Andrew was kind enough to lend his superior artistic talents to creating an incredible poster. It is, even if you're not a fan of Metallica, if you're an art fan, it was just a really nice piece, a really beautiful piece to look at. He put a lot of hidden Metallica references in there for the fans that really were able to pick it apart.
Yeah, this is the fanboy poster of all posters, I think.
It was funny.
Really well done.
It was funny. There were Reddit threads of I believe that the smoke represents this, whatever. And I was like, no, it's just smoke. But whatever.
Did you go in and debunk them, or were you like,
no.
Just let it ride?
No, I just let it go. It's like,
let them have their fun.
Makes me sound really interesting.
You guys are overthinking it, But thank you, Andy, for joining us again. Like I said, we haven't had you on in a while, and I think this is a great episode to bring back your talents in talking about a movie of this caliber. We've all seen it in the theater, so it's been about out for about a week and a half or so. So let's jump into it. We're going to talk about the stats first. Of course, this was released on March 4th of 2022, directed by Matt Reeves, most notably known in this genre for directing the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes as well. Mm-hmm. He's done some other stuff, Cloverfield, etc. But most recently, this has been his big 2 tentpole movies. The cast: Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne / the Batman, Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle / Catwoman, Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon with no slash. He's just James Gordon. Paul Dano as Edward Nashton / the Riddler.
Ashton.
Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobblepot / the Penguin. And Andy Serkis, who was no Slash, as Alfred Pennyworth. So there's your cast. You know, if you're familiar with the Batman series of films, none of these names of characters are going to sound, they're not going to sound foreign to you. These are kind of the standard characters we've been seeing in a lot of the Batman films. So, and this film is coming on the heels, literally, of the Justice League, two versions of the Justice League, right? There was the 2017 version, which was directed by Joss Whedon, partially Joss Whedon, partially Zack Snyder. Much controversial, belabored production, a lot of issues with it. Fans weren't too happy. It was essentially a bomb. They were clamoring. We know that Zack Snyder has another version. We want to see what he was going to do. We want it. And in something unprecedented, HBO said, you know what, we'll foot the bill. We'll do it. And so they allowed Zack Snyder to assemble what was called the Snyder version of Justice League, which was some reshoots, adding footage, changing the pacing of the film. And that was released in 2021. So we literally, Eric, just got a Batman film last year. Technically.
We did, technically, yes. And it was very, very, I didn't think I would enjoy it, but I did. I watched it at least once just to get the feel of it. But I was really impressed with how it came to be. And I really liked the structure of it. And to me, it felt like a really cool, like graphic novel type structure where everything was done in chapters and, you know, that kind of thing. So I really liked the way he got to present his vision. I probably won't watch it again because of the length. And, you know, I didn't think it was a great film to begin with. I mean, the whole, like, I wasn't a fan of Batman versus Superman and the whole, the mythology that they were setting up there. But I was really impressed with how he got to be able to come back and essentially give us something that we should have gotten in the first place. I don't know how this could have been in the theater. I really don't. Yeah. I don't see myself sitting there for 4 hours.
They would have to do a Harry Potter theater. Split it, right?
Kind of split it right down the middle. But
so Andy, that begs the question, you know, do we need another Batman film literally right after Ben Affleck? You know, and granted, Ben Affleck did not get a standalone Batman movie, and that's where that kind of ties into the production of this film, which we'll get to. But do we need a Batman film right on the heels of literally a Batman last year?
Yes. I could talk for 5 hours about Zack Snyder. The thing about Zack Snyder stuff is, like, he leans into DC specifically, as opposed to Marvel, has always embraced the mythology of superheroes. Yeah. It's bigger than some kid in Brooklyn or something, or, you know, the Bronx. We're at Brooklyn, yeah.
Spider-Man,
yeah,
in Queens,
Queens.
Sorry,
yeah. Cap is Brooklyn.
Gotcha. That's right.
Yeah, Cap.
Again, I'm a DC kid, so I mean, they've always embraced the fantastical side of things. They were our modern Zeuses and Herculeses, and DC characters have always been larger than life. And they always had these kind of like big crossover comics where, like, the universe is at stake, or everyone teams up to fight something that is going to destroy the fabric of time or something like that. And that's how I see the Snyderverse, is like the modern gods. You know, he has these almost oil paintings of, you know, Amazons and things, and it's gorgeous, but it's just not, it's so completely different than what we see in the Batman, and we'll get to that. But it's just that, like, you're asking if there's room for both. I feel like he painted the Justice League graphic novel of, like, the mythology of superheroes, and the Batman is coming back into, you know, the grounded reality of, it's just some guy dressed up like a bat because he's got you know, issues with the death of his parents, you know. So, like, I just feel like, you know, I don't know, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but it feels very much like, there was a theory a while back where the reason the Star Wars prequels were so over the top was this, because they had become myth by the time that we roll around to A New Hope. So it's almost like somebody during the time of A New Hope is telling the story of what happened back then, and it's like heightened a little bit. And I feel like that's kind of what Snyder did. Like, it's just heightened, you know. And when we find ourselves in this new movie, The Batman, it's like a documentary. We're watching this happen. So I hope that answers the question.
That's great. That's great. You made a lot of good points, Andy. And we can't help but draw comparisons to the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right?
Yeah.
And the thing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, love it or hate it, is everything is so tightly interconnected. It makes sense. You get the impression that these things are well thought out years in advance. If even if they don't have a property yet, they're thinking about when they will maybe get the X-Men and how will that be incorporated. Yeah. Does DC? It seems like DC's strategy is a little bit different. Is they almost seem reactionary to Marvel, like with Justice League. It's like, well, we got to put something together like the Avengers to varying degrees of success. But then when that kind of didn't work and Suicide Squad was a little iffy, they decide to make an R-rated Joker film.
Yeah.
Right. So they kind of say, okay, well, we're going to do something different. And the Batman kind of lives in that realm as well, Eric. So do you think that this is a strategy that works for DC? And do you think Marvel could take a lesson from it? Or do you think Marvel is too ingrained and they are so built into their foundation now that they really could not do something outside of their universe?
Well, I think Marvel is very specific. They've created their own universe. The MCU is its own thing, and they do reference a lot of the comics and things like that. But it's this really unique take on building this shared universe with these characters, and the way they're written and the way they're done is not exactly like the comic. Whereas like the DC, I never understood the whole like why they always keep rebooting everything. Why do we have 5 different Batmans? And but Zach, my son, who was a huge DC fan as well, kind of related to me that it's all about, because DC is very famous for having multi-Earths, or very sort of like they created like their multiverse long before Marvel did, I think. Am I wrong in that assessment, Andy? I don't.
Crisis. There was a thing called Crisis of Infinite Earths many years ago. I'm not sure of the timeline, but it's definitely a long time ago. And they also had a thing called Elseworlds, which was just one-off stories about
So I'm thinking like in this case for the Batman and for Joker, they may be following Marvel's lead in terms of like referencing a lot of like basing stories on existing cinema, like films, like the Joker was Scorsese. It was pretty much based on 2 of his films. I mean, that was the movie. And I feel like the Batman in this case is like David Fincher.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe a little bit of Ridley Scott.
It seems like DC is having much more success with these disconnected films that rather than trying to connect everything and like I said, to varying degrees of success, Joker is the most successful R-rated film of all time.
Yeah,
it was the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. Now that should say something, and maybe that kind of gave DC maybe a little bit more of a better feeling of letting Matt Reeves go, because this film was originally supposed to be a Ben Affleck directed and starring film. This was going to be the follow-up to his standalone film after all the work he's done in Justice League, Batman vs Superman, and
right.
Suicide Squad, all that stuff. This was going to be the standalone film. And then Affleck decides to kind of pull away from directing. He's like, I can't direct and act. Then he started having some personal problems, divorce, some substance abuse, and then just ended up pulling away from the whole thing. He was connected with Matt Reeves at the time. So Matt Reeves did come on board at the same time as Affleck decided not to direct. And then Affleck leaves and Matt Reeves just says, we're scrapping the whole thing. And kind of starting from finish. So Andy, do you enjoy like these disconnected films, or do you feel like the MCU is like, they're in it to win it, and everything is, their universe is so expansive, but it's all connected? Well, you prefer seeing these types of films where they can just kind of go off and not have to pay lip service to anything that came before?
Right. Yeah. If you walk into Barnes and Noble, into the graphic novel section, you're going to find so many different Batman stories, from like ones where he's in space, ones where like the Joker wears his own skin as a mask, and like Superman stories with pink kryptonite and, just the crazy stuff, and there isn't a better story format in the world better than comic books that is suited for this. It's like you're pulling a one-off story off the shelf sort of thing. So it's being pulled into film, but like the thing is I loved having Marvel have everything connected together. I thought it was brilliant. I loved seeing it all connected together. I loved it. I loved at the ending of Endgame. It was one of the most satisfying experiences I've ever had in the theater. I walked out of that like, I feel so complete right now. After it was over, I was like, I am done. Like the story is done. The story is over. It was perfect. I can't handle through lines anymore. I want one-offs. But so it's going back just a little bit. I've always felt like DC didn't have a plan overall, which kind of frustrated me a little bit tremendously because I'm a huge DC fan, and I feel like they had 2 or 3 really good movies that were kind of buried into a pile of other stuff, But my biggest complaint is that the recent DC movies, they just never trusted early on. They didn't trust their source materials like Marvel did. Marvel trusted that people wanted Iron Man straight out of the comics. They want in a Spider-Man straight out of high school, but DC movies, it just felt like they were constantly apologizing for their characters. And they were obsessed with the fact that nobody would want a big blue Boy Scout in Superman. They thought, nobody's going to like this. They have to make him all aggro and broken. But Marvel proved that we do love a big blue Boy Scout by the name of Captain America. Everything that we loved about Captain America is what they thought we would hate about Superman. And it can be done. Just trust your source material and get good writers. And the Batman did exactly this. Like they mined the comic books. Like it is, everything in that movie is straight out of the comic books, but we'll talk about that. But I mean, that's my thing is like, I feel like Marvel did it. They did it perfect. So it's over. I don't need this. This new wave of Marvel, I don't care how they come together anymore. You know what I mean? Like
it's fatigue.
The next Avengers, do you really care that much? I mean, I don't. I don't. They might nail it. They probably will because they probably movies.
Will.
But for right now, it's just like, man, these one-off stories, it's like a breath of fresh air,
Well, and is it also the glut of material too? So just to wrap up the Marvel conversation is Marvel also has, how many shows came out last year on Disney Plus? WandaVision, Loki, What If, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and there was another one, right?
They all felt like Falcon and Winter Soldier. They all felt like epilogues to me. And something that wasn't exactly needed.
Yeah.
But it's just more content that's out there. So you literally are not getting a chance to exhale after Endgame, right? Because it's just more films and more streaming stuff. So now it's kind of like every time you turn around, you finish a season, there's something else coming, and you're not getting a chance. I think what Andy's getting is you're not getting a chance to miss it.
Yeah.
And keep in mind too. I mean, those movies, that was a decade.
Yeah.
That's 10 years of our lives that we saw these films. And now I feel like this new stuff, the next generation can have it. You're loving these new characters, let them have their due. I don't mind that they're rolling this stuff out, but it's like for me, and Endgame was kind of the jumping off point. That was the perfect opportunity to say.
That was where you got off the bus?
Yeah, I think so. I'm enjoying, I could watch this stuff, but I'm not as engaged as I was, So, yeah.
Move to the door, Doc. Was that your stop, Eric? The Fugitive? You missed your stop.
Right.
So that kind of brings us now to another standalone DC film that, we're going to kind of start to talk about. Now, when we talk about this film, we will be talking about spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film yet, well, either stop it here and save it, or just listen. There's not a ton. It's not over spoilery where, stuff's going to get totally ruined. But we're going to start. Let's start the conversation. I think the first part of the conversation we need to talk about is Robert Pattinson.
Mm-hmm.
Is another casting decision, much like, we'll go. I'll roll off a couple. Michael Keaton, Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix, and now Robert Pattinson. And those were all casting decisions at the time where fans or people were like, WTF? Michael
Yep.
Keaton, he's a comedic actor. What is he? He's Beetlejuice. How could he do this? Heath Ledger as the Joker? Wait,
Right.
Jack Nicholson was the Joker. How's Heath Ledger, A Knight's Tale? How's he going to be that?
Yeah.
And then Joaquin Phoenix, like what? Like you're making a Joker film and with that guy? It's like, it doesn't make sense. I think I'm going to think that Robert Pattinson might be one of the biggest head scratchers only because, and this is unfair. This is not fair to him, but the specter of Twilight still haunts him.
Yeah.
And he has gone through great lengths to distance himself from that, a la Johnny Depp. When Johnny Depp came out of 21 Jump Street, he started just doing weird roles to distance himself. Leonardo DiCaprio did the same thing. After Titanic became an albatross around his neck, he just started making choices about films that he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Pattinson did the same thing, but I think people kind of forgot about him because he was making such really indie films. He wasn't making big films like Leo was,
right?
But he was making like The Lighthouse and some of these other films that are really just kind of actors' films that all of a sudden they say Robert Pattinson's going to be Batman. They're like, the guy from Twilight?
Yeah, that's the first thing you think of. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because not a lot of people saw The Lighthouse, like he just is very odd little choices that these actors make. I wasn't sure, going in. I was like, he's young. He's obviously, he's got that.
He's got the jawline.
He's got exactly. I mean, that one shot of him throughout the movie where he turns when he's looking up. Yeah. Talking about
so good, so good.
But he nailed it. He absolutely nailed the angst. He this was a very specific point in time in the film where he was still very much, I am vengeance thing. This is right on the cusp of becoming a hero, or the Dark Knight of Gotham, the savior of Gotham City, and where he was just all about taking revenge and just beating the crap out of bad guys. What did you think?
Were you worried about Pattinson beforehand?
Yeah,
were you worried about that this was going to be like, oh no, not a Jared Leto? Now Jared Leto was another head scratcher, but that didn't work out.
Oh,
the way they planned it, right? Jared Leto was going to turn the Joker upside down, and he did, but not in a good way.
He tries too hard in everything that he does. But I don't mean to be a jerk. I'm not a fan of his stuff. But I'm Batman '89. I was 12 years old, and that was like I was in. I mean, I don't think people remember how everything had a bat symbol on it. Like Times Square was covered, shoes, T-shirts. I remember doing selling candy bars in 7th grade, and all of the prizes were Batman prizes. And I wanted to sell it was the biggest cultural event of that time. So Michael Keaton, it's kind of like Doctor Who, like your favorite's always the one that you embrace when you're first, And so when I saw pictures of Heath Ledger, they were like paparazzi photos from across the street of Heath Ledger as the Joker. And his hair was like fluorescent green, and his makeup was smeared, and his outfit was, and I was like, what in the hell are you doing to one of my favorite characters? I was so mad. And I was just so skeptical and everything else. I really like Batman Begins. And then I saw Dark Knight, and I'm like, I am reserving judgment from now on, like from this point on, because he just nailed it so well. That I said I've got to reserve judgment for this.
No, that's a great point you make. Now has those head scratching casting decisions been made so many times that now people are kind of like, let's give
it a chance.
Let's see, because there certainly wasn't the uproar about it. But I think people were just more like, oh, like Robert Pattinson, almost like where's he been,
right?
Type of a thing, right? It's kind of like. He kind of disappeared and no one heard from him. And all of a sudden he's going to be Batman, kind of a la Robert Downey Jr., where he was like kind of the missing man. Then all of a sudden he's cast in Iron Man. I was like, oh, what, that guy? Like who's going to hire him? So it was very strange.
I cannot overstate how much I loved Robert Pattinson as Batman. Like I loved him as Batman. I was reading Batman comics all the way until my late 30s. Like, Eric can tell you, as long as I've got stacks and stacks of Batman comics. Year 2 is a very special year. Like, the year 1 is like he's making all the mistakes and everything else. Year 2, he's kind of getting into his groove. He nailed the character. Like he's giving, like, he doesn't care about the Wayne legacy. He's just all about vengeance, and it's like that. But anyway, there's certain, when he walked into the crime scene in this movie, and he walks in almost like, with the heavy boots. And the cool thing about Pattinson is everybody says like it's the emo Batman and all that stuff. I don't know where they're getting, and maybe it's because of the black makeup, but he's Batman. He has to wear black makeup, but he walks in and he's not scowling and like, what are you doing? He walks in and he observes. He's just kind of like,
he's just kind of standing there. Yeah.
He's got this look on his face like, okay, there's a crime scene. There's the murder weapon. He's just observing. And there's a shot, like he walks in slow motion kind of into the crime scene, and a cop puts his hand on his chest, and he looks down at the cop's hand and he looks back up. And I got like goosebumps because it was like, he fills the room. Like he is Batman. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he almost walks in like a cowboy. He's almost got like spurs when he walks in, and he's got this weight. And like, I just couldn't, I can't believe I'm talking this much up about anything. Like I just got so excited about, God, they're nailing it. Like,
well, that's going to lead me to my question then. Yeah. Let's get this out of the way. Eric, did you like this film or did you dislike this film? I think we need to put this out now.
This film.
You loved it.
Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah.
Oh, A+. Yeah.
A+?
I loved it. Yeah.
Okay. I loved it as well. And I had a feeling I was going to just based on the trailer. So I think just so the audience understands where we're going to be coming from. This is certainly not our Boba Fett episode.
Well, I have everything at stake here. If it was bad, I would have hated it with all of my might and energy and gusto.
Okay, so let's start there. Yeah. Andy, you kind of kicked it off, so I think this is a good point to start at what makes this different. Because I think Eric, I think you'd agree that the Nolan trilogy is probably the gold standard at this point for Batman. Nothing against the Tim Burton stuff, but I think the Nolan trilogy really kind of brought Batman into quote unquote the real world, or more of a real world where Batman had kind of, the villains were real world. I dare say this brings it even further down, because what we're getting here, and Eric nailed it you nailed it and you stole it, and I'm glad you did. This is kind of like a Seven version of a Batman film. It has a lot in common with Seven, but it also brings him back down to his detective roots, which a lot of the Batman films kind of, okay, Batman's smart, he figures things out, but this had more in common with a straight up murder mystery noirish film, Eric. And I think that when you said Fincher, I think you hit it right on the head with the style and the feel of it.
Well, the darkness of the film, and I have to point this out right out the gate, is Greg Larson is the cinematographer on this film, and he's working with Denis Villeneuve. He did Dune. He did Rogue One. Yeah. And if you
Mandalorian,
if you love the visuals of Rogue One and or even the darkness of Dune, this was like, I think a lot of people are complaining about how dark the movie is, but I think it works to great effect.
Yeah.
I was leaning in, trying to figure out what I was looking at, but that's a good thing.
That was a choice, though.
So well for this film. Yeah, it has to.
It was absolutely a filming choice, much like I was drawing comparisons to Seven with the rain, the brown tones, the reds, a lot of that Fincher-esque world building just with the cinematography, right? Just with what you were seeing and the colors. And how dark it was, but it wasn't dark because it wasn't well shot. It was dark as a stylistic choice.
It's a natural, natural lighting. Yeah. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a huge Blade Runner fan. So for me, the first 10 minutes of this film was Blade Runner, because you did have the neon, the city, Gotham City, you had all the neon lights with the darkness, and then the rain, and there was because every time we watch a movie of this type, that's a Blade Runner shot. That's a Blade Runner shot. Ridley Scott was whatever. He influenced even Fincher, I think, in my opinion. But and when that scene, when they first shot of the movie, when you see all these people walking around in the rain with the umbrellas and then the neon, and I leaned over to to Zach, and I'm like, with the corner of my eye, he's like, "All right, I know," because I'm always messing with it, but as the movie went on, it really captured the flavor of more of a Seven, and the visceral edge to it. And, when Paul Dano comes into frame, and it just the Zodiac feel, like the Zodiac killer type of thing. And I'm a huge fan. Zach actually got me into like some of the graphic novels. I read Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Year One, Year Two. And there were so many references to all of these. I think there's, this was probably the Batman film that has the most Easter eggs in it, but it doesn't hit you over the head. If you're a Batman fan, you're going to get a lot of the stuff in this movie. And it's not like really super obvious though. If you're a true Batman fan, you're really going to pick up on certain plot points and aspects of the movie. But yeah, I was really impressed with the tone, the pacing, and just how the whole thing was just such noir. And I'm a huge fan of that to begin with. So it wasn't like a bombastic, like the Nolan films was a little bit more big budget, right? They're much more of the blockbustery, even though they were grounded in reality. There were still those really great big set pieces in each of the films that really kind of took it to another level. Here it was just straight on, like the whole thing was just, the two action sequences that stood out.
Which one?
That was like the car chase, and then I think the end of the film. Right. Yeah. And that was pretty much it. For the rest of the film, it's just people talking in rooms, and that was
smaller scenes.
Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant.
Much smaller scenes. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in Batman Begins, I believe, Christian Bale, he does a little voiceover in the beginning when he's kind of like on the run, right? He's kind of like, oh, I've learned about the true nature of what it is to survive, right? When he's kind of like splitting,
a little bit
stealing.
Yeah.
I found this voiceover much different. This kind of reminded me something more of like a Punisher war journal.
Yeah.
Where he's kind of, it's been 2 years of darkness, and, can I save this city? It was more like almost more like a diary.
Yeah.
Type feeling to it.
To add to what Eric was saying, this is the most Batman movie ever. And Batman Year One, the comic book, is the entire narration is his diary, explaining, and it's written exactly in that same broody, I'm not making a difference, that sort of stuff or whatever. But again, like you were talking about Long Halloween and the Falcone. I thought they were called the Falcones, not the Falcones. This is the first movie I've heard them say. I've heard Falcone from everything except for this movie. I don't know where they made that decision, but there's so much stuff out of the comic book, like in the diary narration in Year One. Selena Kyle in Year One is a sex worker, and she takes care of her blonde friend and all this stuff. So there's like these little things, like the city of Bloodhaven, where Nightwing is. Now they mentioned Bloodhaven and Blackgate Prison, which is. The writers know the content, and the crazy thing is about the grounded in reality. I remember feeling like excited about the fact that Batman Begins and Dark Knight was grounded in reality. And then like I caught after seeing I've seen it twice. I've seen the Batman twice. And after the first time I caught like a very quick clip of the end of The Dark Knight Rises, where they're putting the bomb on the bat plane and Catwoman's there and Commissioner Gordon's there. And it's so campy. That scene is so campy compared to this movie. When we saw that shot compared to Tim Burton's movie, like Tim Burton's compared to this movie, Tim Burton is like we're watching,
a cartoon.
It might as well be Hobbits or something. Right. It's like a fantasy version of Batman. Right. But I mean, like to make the Nolan films feel campy is crazy to me. I just remember thinking like, man, that is so over the top.
That's what I was thinking too.
Me too. I felt the same thing. I felt like, wow, that the Nolans were the gold standard, and they might still be as far as like a trilogy of films and recreating the character in a more serious or grounded way. And then this just went 3 stories below underneath whatever Nolan had done into the grittier. We're going to bring it up. I hate using this word all the time, but noirish. But that's what it is. It's got that detective feel to it. It's got the murder mystery feel to it. It's got the drama. It's got the story behind it too, because this movie is largely story driven. It is literally about all these different things that are happening, and we're learning it at the same time that Batman is. He might be a step or two ahead in solving some of the riddles, but a lot of the stuff he's actually blind to as well, because he ends up playing into the Riddler's hands to help with his master plan, and kind of didn't believe that was possible, and thought, oh, no, that's this can't be. And it's like, no,
he still has something
helped
to learn. I feel it's interesting to note that, they're love the dynamic between him and Gordon, for example, the way they were working together in this film. They already had that relationship far more than they did in even the Nolan films, where Gary Oldman was kind of doing his own thing and Batman was doing his own thing. But to see them together and actually, like, especially that scene where they come in and he's just like, you gotta get out the back way,
Yeah.
It's like, he's like leans in. It almost feels like I wouldn't say like a comedy buddy cop kind of, but it does have that kind of feel where, we got each other's backs no matter what.
He was more like a mentor, Jim Gordon. He was almost like Batman's mentor of
Jeffrey Wright,
of kind of guiding him through.
Yeah, so good.
Like he was kind of guiding Batman through some of the red tape and how to get around this. Which again, I'm going to draw another parallel to Seven, reminding me very much of the Morgan Freeman Brad Pitt relationship in Seven, where Morgan Freeman is like the older, more experienced cop, and Brad Pitt's character was like the hot-headed young detective that wanted to get everything done. And again, I can't help but kind of in my mind, I was thinking, wow, it just kind of really has some of that DNA on it. Andy, do you feel that
there's a million? There's a million parallels between that and Seven. I mean, especially with the Riddler, and like basically turning himself in and going without, like detective, but he just kind of chills out at the Nighthawks painting cafe. But how cool was that scene where he's fighting off the cops in the like he wakes up because they almost take his mask off, like that scene where he's pushing the cops away, whatever, it was straight out of like a 70s gritty movie, like that. Like it felt like late 70s, early 80s kind of.
It reminded me of LA Confidential. There's a scene in LA Confidential.
Yes.
When all the cops are like fighting and they're trying to find one of the killers, and they're Guy Pearce's character's trying to control all the cops, and they're kind of getting in his way. Again, there's just so many like, and I wasn't looking at it saying, oh, that was a ripoff. It was just kind of like it just all these things kind of fit together. And then you've got Bruce Wayne, which is, we're talking a lot about Batman, but Bruce Wayne's character is also created in a specific way to be like the anti-Bruce Wayne, because all the other Bruce Waynes we've seen have been the swinging. He has to maintain this image, this playboy image, even though he doesn't want to. This Bruce Wayne is, and it's no secret that Matt Reeves, he said he based this a little bit on Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
About someone who's withdrawn and inside of themselves and more reclusive, because the Batman persona is so strong in his life that he doesn't have the energy or the wherewithal to be someone else.
Yeah, I'll point out another thing, with the Nolan as well, like the scene where Christian Bale is sitting with Katie Holmes in the car, and she takes him to the, to the burrows, like down, and then she slaps him because he pulls out the gun. He's like, I'm going to do this. Like that scene, I thought at the time was really intense, but it doesn't compare to what Pattinson pulls off. I mean, just he doesn't even have to say anything.
Yeah.
Right. And I love the fact that he's wearing the makeup.
Yeah.
That takes you back to like Batman Returns. Remember when
he pulls
Keaton,
the mask off?
You could
pulled
tell
off the mask and it wasn't there.
And it wasn't there, right? So that to me was like, oh, that there's a nod to almost like a nod to that. But we're actually saying that yes, he does wear the makeup because it makes sense, So that
and the Bruce Wayne character is almost non-existent. It's almost like a hollow person.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a lot of lines in the film.
Yeah.
When he does, it's adversarial. His relationship with Alfred is more adversarial than it, and Alfred is not a butler in this film. He was more of a protector, military person, military background, maybe worked security for Wayne, but certainly wasn't like a hand and foot butler. And there was that kind of adversarial relationship where, Bruce Wayne was kind of like, oh, like leave me alone, or why are you bothering me? But then he would go back, and then Alfred would still go back to work and work on the cipher. And I figured this out while they're still kind of respecting each other, So it was also a different look at Alfred as well, not the doting, the doting butler and the caretaker.
I think there was a nice blend with
Yeah.
him, and I think he had a little bit of that Michael Caine in him, where he was, of course, giving the obligatory speech about the family legacy and keeping up with with that, and it's really important that you do this and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, I like the fact that Alfred's kind of a badass, right? Like he's got a past. He was, he might have been a code breaker of some sort, like maybe in some, in the military or a spy or something like that. I always thought that was kind of cool, that he would be that interesting, and that, the secret life of Alfred Pennyworth,
Can I throw in something about Bruce?
Sure.
This kind of goes back to the story as well. The structure of the story. Bruce and Batman, but mostly Bruce, is so single-minded and myopic, and this goes to what you were saying earlier, Dean, that we're following through his eyes, and we're watching the story unfold through his eyes, and we see parts of the story. You kind of see it happening more so the second time you see it. A lot of stuff happens off camera, and there was the Riddler, doing his thing or whatever, and then we see Bruce pulls up to the funeral. And all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people doing the "We are the Riddler" picketing, and Bruce is like, "What?" And we don't know why that is. We have no idea. Why are all these people rooting for the Riddler? I guess we didn't see the whole the story about him having an audience and the kind of the militant
the social media that he was cultivating. Stuff.
So and then then they go into he goes into the funeral, and there is a 15 seconds of something happening outside. It's 10 or 15 seconds. You hear boom, scream, boom, 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 scream. And none of that is shown. You just see people reacting what's going on, and you start getting panic. And a lesser director would have shown every single inch of that. The car jumping this and whatever. It's so freaky because it draws. There's a lot of I watched, I kind of absorbed all of the 9/11 documentaries and all the footage from the Trade Center, all that stuff. There's a lot of feel of that, where you're just, something's happening out there and you don't want, but you kind of do, and it feels gross, and they're screaming out there and stuff. And even the way the cops are portrayed, they're not "Brr, brr, brr, I'm a cop." They're some of them are faulty, some of them are cool, some of them there's a police chief or whatever that's talking to Batman in the interrogation room, and he's got this really high voice. He's like, "What'd you just say to me?" They didn't pick they didn't pick some burly guy. They picked that guy looks they
didn't pick Eckhart.
You're right. And then there's this scene when Gordon shows up to the square garden or whatever, and he comes in, he's like, "Who's in charge?" And everybody's like, "I don't know." And he goes, "Everybody quiet." He demands, "I'm in charge now. This is what we're doing." Everybody's like, "Okay, we're doing it." And it felt so much like those videos of real policemen. It felt so grounded in reality. Nobody was posing. It felt there's confusion, and
it wasn't the rallying of the troops. It's listen, everybody shut up, here's what's going on. We've got and you made a really good point about the scene at the funeral. Actually, a lesser director would have just had the car crash in out of nowhere, and it would have picked up from, it would have picked up from there. They wouldn't have even shown it outside. It would just come crashing through, and it would have been a big shock moment, a big jump scare. Right. And then Batman would have had to react to it. But you're right, that building, you hear it, and Bruce hears it because he's listening for it, but he's not seeing anything happen, and you're still hearing the careening and the ping-ponging of the car as it's making its way through.
The entire crowd the reaction of the crowd, and the
screaming
and the gas. People are starting to scream. People are getting up. What's going on? That was the tension.
The cop comes out with the phone, and the phone rings, and everybody ducks.
Yeah, they thought it was going to go off.
Everybody in the theater kind of and started laughing because everybody was nervous.
Yeah, it was great.
And just the storytelling as well, where we didn't have yet another showing of Batman's parents getting killed. If you didn't know anything about Batman, by this movie, you'd have no idea he was there. You just hear about his parents were killed. They don't even talk about the fact that he was there when it happened. They do all of that storytelling every time Bruce looks at the kid.
Yep.
Like something happened to this guy, and he's got to take care of this kid, and that's so good. Like, we don't need to see what happened to Uncle Ben in every single Spider-Man movie. It's the same. Like this was that thing where it's like it's understood, and it's that you don't even see Gordon and Batman meet. They're already we're in the middle of something here. There's already a relationship here. I love that. I just love that. Like they don't. The story didn't take. The audience. They didn't assume the audience were idiots. Like they just. We're going, come with us, sort of thing. That's why I loved it so much.
Yeah, it was much like Joker, where it was very grounded in the material, and relied on the filmmaking and not the gimmickry and not the Bat voice. There's really no Bat voice in this. There's no, where is she?
That's
it's kind of like that is absent, from this, which again kind of brings it into reality that he's just a guy, and Bruce Wayne barely speaks, so I'm not sure anybody would have noticed anyway that they had the same voice, because he's so reclusive and so withdrawn that you probably wouldn't be able to know anyway.
I was going to bring this up earlier when that there's if you have a Batman movie, there's by definition every single Batman movie has something to be embarrassed about. Like it's a guy in a bat suit. You know what I mean? So like there's varying degrees of embarrassment of all the Batman movies, and the lesser of the embarrassments were the Nolan movies, but every time Batman opened his mouth, I'm like, oh, and it's not what we do, where are the drugs going? There's none of that, so it's like, so there's in this movie, there's just so little to be embarrassed about in this movie. Sure, he's in a Batman outfit, but it's like it's explained.
But even the outfit is cooler.
Yeah, but he explains in the beginning that I am the shadows, and like I love that opening narration where it just showed people scared of dark. Yeah, like the darkness was a character, and like man, it was.
He said I can't be everywhere.
Yeah,
but they can be. He goes, I can't be everywhere, but when they see the signal, they don't know where I am.
He's on the
kind
prowl.
Of like alluded that. Like I could be anywhere, but I can't be everywhere. But that doesn't make a difference, because the symbolism has struck fear in people. So they don't know if it's going to be their turn this time. Like the drop head when he was robbing the store, and he kind of walked out, and he's like, oh, like is it going to be me? Like, what do I do? Normally I'd run down a dark alley, but I'm not sure I want to run down a dark alley right now. Because it might be there. And then that whole scene with the gang initiation. Right. Yeah. That was that whole thing come to life, where they're just standing there looking at the shadows, and they're looking down that corridor, and it's just dark, and they just hear like some footfalls. And they're just waiting for it. And they don't know, is it going to be and that could have been a very cheap way out, where it's like a drunk comes shuffling out, and they kind of exhaled, and then Batman came up from behind. But no, he came out of the shadows.
He came out, and what an entrance, man. That was fantastic. I mean, that the whole, like, you nailed it, Andy, when you said the darkness, the cinematography, it creates that tension, and that tension just runs rampant throughout the entire movie. The characters are heightened because of that tension. And there's, like, you see, like, you have your cameos, right? Like Peter Sarsgaard, he plays you didn't know it was Peter Sarsgaard though, because it was so dark. But it's like, is that who that is? You're actually leaning in, but you're engaged with the character. You don't care that it's this actor coming in and you're doing a cameo. You're not distracted by that at all, whatsoever. And then of course John Turturro.
That was I forgot he was in. I forgot he was even in it. I'm like, oh my god, John Turturro.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Speaking of unrecognizable, we have to throw some props to Colin Farrell.
Oh my god,
who absolutely the makeup job on that was nothing short of incredible.
He was perfect. He was perfect.
Unrecognizable, fully in character, fully invested in that character,
almost likable. Like, he's like, "What are you showing me? Come on!" Like,
sweetheart.
Yeah,
sweetheart.
Yeah,
and
not over the top.
Really,
not over the top.
Yeah, he was a bit. What it was, he was a big character, right? He was the character was a big character, but it wasn't like Eric is saying, like, not overplayed. He didn't chew up the scenery and be like, I'm gonna do this. There was one funny scene I noticed when Gordon and Batman caught Penguin. and Penguin's like, oh no, it's not La, whatever, it's L, right? And they kind of, and then they're like, oh, it's Falcon, it's Falcone, and they walk away, and Penguin's ankles were tied together, and he starts walking away, and he ends up waddling
like a penguin.
I was like, oh man, I said that, like you gotta pay attention when you're invested in it. Like you catch those things in a good way, because it wasn't cheap. I'm like, a lot of people probably. I guess I thought I was the only person in the theater. There are obviously 2 other people that caught that as well, and I'm happy.
What's
for it.
crazy is I loved it better the second time, and like it felt I only had 2 complaints about the movie. One of them was the length the first time. The second time it went by so fast, because I guess when you don't know when it's going to end, it feels a little bit long. But I got to focus on a lot more details the second time, and Oz's makeup, I would bet all the money in my bank account that wasn't what's his name,
Colin Farrell.
Actor Colin Farrell. He disappears completely, but the cool thing is like the scene what you're talking about where they have him tied up, he's got his profile, and the Batmobile's lights are like shining this way, and there's this like light scattering things that happens with skin. You see through his nose like a real nose, so that like there's this stuff going on, and then there's a scene where he turns, and the scar that he's got makes his nose look like a penguin nose. So like I don't know if this is like I need to see it one more time, but I think it could have been like strategic that scar makes it specifically in certain angles that he looks like he's got like the comic book.
Could be.
I would guess that it was. I would guess that was on purpose for people that catch it and that.
That's the kind of thing you want from a very, very, very talented, who's got a good eye, who knows how to set these things up, and that. Yeah, I mean,
it's there. It's there if you're paying attention to it. If not, you're not missing anything. It's the movie isn't diminished, but I think it's enhanced when you're able to pick up on those small little things.
Can we talk about the Batmobile entrance?
Well, yeah, I was just going to get to gadgets. Actually, it's funny. It's funny. You hit a perfect segue. Let's talk about first about the squirrel suit, because I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
That normally, like in the Batman, in the Nolan ones and all the ones, the cape is like how he flies and everything. Yeah. I enjoyed the realism of him actually zipping into what's called the squirrel suit. It's a glider suit. Yeah. It's called the squirrel suit, where people jump out and they kind of go through canyons. And I'm like, that makes more sense to me. Like, again, it just brought the realism down that he wasn't going to be soaring over the city in a cape, which again is nothing wrong with it. The Nolan trilogy explained it, how he could kind of fabricate it and work with it, make it rigid. But it was just that, for me, it was that extra layer of, okay, this is how somebody would do this. If they were going to jump off a building, they would probably use a squirrel suit. And he kind of zipped into it. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, cool. And he just,
he landed exactly like somebody would land in one of those things.
Yeah, that's right. The parachute didn't come off quite like he planned.
But before he took the leap, though, you noticed the fear.
Yeah.
That he had. He was scared.
It was probably his first time doing it, maybe.
Like he was like, oh, like he took he was gasping, like, holy shit, that's
I don't want to have to do this.
I have to do this, that was cool.
Yeah.
So it wasn't
then the Batmobile, which is for me, it was kind of like Mad Max's car on steroids. That's what I drew the equivalent to. The Road Warrior. It was like that kind of like monster machine,
That whole scene leading up to when it, Christine's awake, basically, the sound that like, you don't know what's happening. And that's what was so cool about it. But that whole scene, we're talking about lighting and cinematography, leading up to that shot where it goes wrong and like Oz is like shooting up the car, like, where are you at, Vengeance? There's a scene where like, I think Gordon tucks behind his car door and like things are smashing and stuff. The lighting in that scene deserves an award alone. Cause like this happens a couple of times where the scenes are lit by gunfire and like the hallway stuff, that we're seeing that too. But that whole shot leading up to the fact, like, how are you going to get out of this? How is anybody going to get out of this? And then the Batmobile turns on, and like people in the audience were, the first time we saw it, we had a great audience. So people were like really into it. And, like that thing turned on. Everybody's like, whoa, yeah, clapping, like it's about to go down, this is my first movie back from COVID, by the way. This is like first movie in 2.5 years for me.
Uh-huh.
So being in a room full of people that are excited about it, and just it felt so good too. It really enhanced the experience.
Yeah, you mentioned about the lighting, about using bullets for lighting, and that was such a great replacement for a strobe effect. And they did it a couple times where they're shooting at him and the bullets are bouncing off him, and and you just see the light from the bullet, and you just see him in different moves, almost as if it was shot with a strobe light, which you could do for dramatic effect. But instead they lit the gun, and it happened a couple times, and I was like, oh, like it was just such great imagery. That's what captivated me, is just the unique way of presenting stuff that we've seen. We've seen Batman fight thousands of times before to varying degrees. The Schumacher stuff with Kilmer was shot too close, and it was too, like, you couldn't get a handle on it.
Yeah.
The Nolan stuff was very clinical and very martial arts oriented.
Yeah.
This was straight up thuggery. Like, this was
brutal.
Like, literally, someone who's uncontrollable. And that I loved at the end, that adrenaline shot.
Yep.
Like, after he got blasted with the shotgun a few times, and he was out, and then like they were taking Selina away, and he pulled out like this. It looked like Predator blood.
Or Venom.
It was like that yellow vial. He just injects himself. It goes like Wolverine Berserker.
Well, I love the fact too that he didn't have the the typical bat belt, the utility belt. He was actually had pockets in his pants, like pouches, and like there was like almost like the Mandalorian, like, right? He's got like almost like a holster type of thing where it's
just different holders,
just like
different holders
things. The cape, I love the collar effect on the cape.
Too.
It kind of
and how the neck went behind it, like the neck was molded behind it.
Oh man, yeah. The bat comes off like it's like a blade. He could use it like he's using that to cut. It was just it was so much more real, and I mean, it just makes everything else look so, even Nolan, like, I mean, even his suit was just, it paled in comparison. I think this was arguably the best looking suit.
Think so, Andy?
All the films. I think so.
Did you guys have any nitpicks?
Eric said he had one.
I have one, and it's not a bad thing. My nitpick is, where the hell was this movie in 92?
What? 92?
30 years ago, where was this movie? They could have totally done this movie back then. This is the movie that I was looking for then.
All right.
When you consider you had Darkman, you had The Crow.
Yeah.
They totally could have done this back in the day, I think. I mean, it didn't require a lot of...
I think they thought they did. I think with Tim Burton, I think they thought they did. I think they thought at the time, like Andy said, at the time, the Keaton one was the default, and it was the best until we saw the next evolution in the Nolan trilogy. So, Eric, I would argue that at the time they thought that was the darkest noirish, because it had that Addams Family feel to it with Tim Burton, with that kind of dark feel to
Very
it.
stylized, sure, but it was great.
And I think The Crow and those other things were maybe inspired by that. Obviously, the James O'Barr comic is, but I think for its time, that's probably the closest we would have gotten. I don't think we would have gotten this if we hadn't gone through the different iterations of it, where the stumbling of George Clooney, the resetting of the stumbling of George Clooney, the resetting of Nolan, and then I think even Ben Affleck's Batman, was a little too. I don't know. It wasn't. I didn't care for Affleck as much. It was
the mythology version of Batman.
Yeah, it was too overblown or just too just out of control. And this was like much like the film Joker. It was bringing the character, like cutting all of that away, cutting away all of the dress and the show and the flash, and getting it back down to what is this character about, which is what Joker did. Is in the end, what is this character about? It's a character study, and that's what the Batman did as well.
There was a lot of
Andy. You had some nitpicks besides the length.
Well, I was just going to say, like there's a lot of The Crow in this movie. And I personally, I think it's my favorite Gotham City too. I mean, there's a lot of favorites in this, like the style of Gotham. Because I remember they filmed it in another country. I don't remember where it was. It was I remember them talking about it, and I remember thinking, I think it was like Bulgaria or something like that. I remember thinking, like, what? What are why? But most of it's CG, or miniatures, however they did it. But it's just got this its own style. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But my two nitpicks, and again, A+ movie. absolutely loved it. Get that Joker scene out of the movie immediately. Oh my God, I hated it so much.
Not necessary?
This would have been a perfect, it felt like the studio said, like, this is good, but can we like throw the Joker in there somehow? Or, you know, it felt like such an add-on. It like, if you're going to bring in the Joker, bring in the Joker. Don't do this little
teaser.
It was just so dumb to me.
That was almost like that should have been like an end credit sequence almost. Yes, it felt like.
Absolutely. Yeah, after the credits. Yeah. And the other thing was, I like Dano a lot. I don't understand. He made a decision early in the movie to breathe very heavy, like a lot. And it's even more noticeable the second time you see it. And then like you go to the funeral scene and you hear him up in the balcony breathing and coughing. Remember that? Like Bruce,
no, I don't recall hearing him. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a scene where like Bruce first looks up to the balcony and you kind of know that he's up there and you hear this breathing and coughing. So I just assume that by the time we see him, he's going to have some sort of lung problems or like
asthmatic.
Yeah, or like, you know, but like he shows up, he's like, no, I'm just a dude. Yeah. You know, like what why have you been breathing so hard for the last 2 hours? It felt like Dano was like, what's going to be my, you know, like the Joker, like Heath Ledger's Joker licked his lips all the times, and you know, whatever. Like, what's going to be
the choice?
What's my affectation? I'm just going to breathe really hard, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't care for that. But again, super nitpicky. I love Dano. I think it was great. Did a great job. But
and speaking of Paul Dano, when we talk Matt Reeves, you know, we talked about how he was Matt Reeves in his mind, that his character of Bruce Wayne was influenced by Kurt Cobain, and obviously the Nirvana song "Something in the Way" is that it frames the film, it bookends it. Matt Reeves said when he was writing the Riddler piece for Dano, he was heavily influenced by Paul Dano's performance as Brian Wilson in the Love and Mercy film. Mm-hmm. That Brian Wilson was a detached character from society in real life, and the way Paul Dano played him, that he wanted his Edward Nashton, his version of the Riddler, to have that kind of cold, kind of detached feeling about him. And when he saw Dano's performance in Love and Mercy, he started to sculpt the character around that and used it as an influence. So you've got Nirvana on one end and you've got Beach Boys on the other. I don't know where else you're going to get kind of these kind of influences from, but
you know, I thought about that when you actually see him for the first time in the diner and when he's making those quirky faces and like he does. And that did come to mind. Brian Wilson came to mind.
He's such a great actor, Paul Dano.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah.
He didn't have a lot of screen. Oddly enough, he didn't have a ton of screen time, but what he did, you know, was very impactful. But his whole the whole jail scene, right, at Arkham, just when they finally are face to face, and he just starts explaining everything.
Yeah, he was great.
Was just absolutely brilliant. Again, it was much like Kevin Spacey in Seven, where Kevin Spacey kind of unrolls I'm telling you because I'm the one in control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the Riddler was doing, is I'm telling you this because I'm letting you know how I used you and how you helped me with this. And you know, you're my partner on this.
There's The Exorcist 3 with there's this kind of a monologue with my recall is getting bad in my old age. He was
welcome.
What's that?
I said welcome.
Oh yeah, Grima Wormtongue, the actor Grima Wormtongue.
Brad Dourif.
Yeah. Brad Dourif is in Exorcist 3. He's doing this. He's like explaining how he kills and stuff like that. It felt very much like that. It reminded me of that. But you were talking about Kurt Cobain earlier, Something in the Way. He said that he was listening to that song on a loop while he was writing the script. And if you listen to the theme, the score, it's got those notes. Dun, dun, dun.
The score was extremely understated.
I heard some
I
Imperial March in there too.
Yeah.
I absolutely heard.
Yeah,
I absolutely heard Empire Strikes Back in there as well.
Yeah, totally. So but I mean, like the guitar strumming of Something in the Way. Dun, 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 dun. Like he must have handed that. Like, here's what I was listening to. Write a theme like this. You know,
absolutely.
It fits perfectly.
Very understated, but very sexy at the same time. Which brings us to Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah.
Your thoughts about her as Catwoman, guys? I mean, what do you?
I loved her because I'm sorry, Dean. Go ahead. I keep
No,
jumping
go
in.
for it. I know. That's all right.
If anything that is, if she's done anything, it's made Michelle Pfeiffer look ridiculous as far as acting is concerned, because she looked cool and everything else. And when I was 12 years old, there was nothing cooler and hotter than Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Like, so we'll go there, but like watching Michelle Pfeiffer now, like the bread, like she's so breathy and like 50s,
when she actually puts a bird in her mouth, and I didn't get any of it.
So, but I mean, like Zoe Kravitz is just some girl, and like she's got cats. That's all we're talking about. She has cats, and she has like a hood that's kind of got ears if you're looking really hard. There's no like, nobody calls her Catwoman. Nobody. She's just some girl, and that just happens to be in this extraordinary circumstances. But that's what I loved about it. It's just, she's not like, she wasn't eaten back to life by cats when she was thrown off of a building or something. You know what I mean? Like it was straight out of year one. Like, so in the comic book to me. So that's why I loved her so much. I think she was awesome.
It was closer. I mean, it was definitely closer aligned to the Anne Hathaway version of Catwoman. Whereas Burglar, she Zoe Kravitz's character, I mean, that character definitely has a skill set. I mean, she's not just doesn't just work in a club. I mean, she has fighting skills. She can absolutely take care of herself. She knows how to break into safes. She's a safe cracker. So she's a well-seasoned thief is what she is, she's just does a lot of different things that she's really good at. So I enjoyed the interplay. Yeah, it seems like usually it's the other way around. It seems like usually like Batman is more attracted to like the female. In this case, it seemed like she was more intrigued by him, by this person that is so closed off, and that she kept trying to get to him, like to really kind of get through to him, and he was just kind of like he eventually relented, but I like that interplay of her just kind of kept on going after him and just kind of kept on trying to get through to him and figure him out. Whereas the other way around, it was in the Nolan ones, it was Bruce Wayne and Batman was a little more affected by her, and she was more at kind of kept people at arm's length. So it was a little bit of a turnaround there, which I enjoyed as well.
Yeah. Well, again, the circumstances, he's still very dealing with his own thing, and she's dealing with hers too. Like her friend is gone, and and then of course they find out she's dead, and so that was and then I think people were commenting too on the end when they were on like riding the motorcycles. They say goodbye. It was kind of odd though to see them riding together.
Then it catches back up to her, and you think something's going to happen there, but then they go there. I thought that was gave
great.
You that thought of maybe he's gonna do something. So
she was probably out of the entire cast, she was probably the least shocking. Because if you're going to say like John Turturro is a serious mob boss, what? Jeffrey Wright's Commissioner Gordon, what? Robert Pattinson, what? Yeah. Everybody in that movie is like, what? Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman. Oh, okay.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I get it.
Absolutely. Nobody, but see, the thing is, like we talked about, nobody going really over the top. And I think everybody was on the same page in this film. I felt like nobody was trying to like outdo one another in their performance, or like I'm Jack Nicholson, or I'm, whatever. So it just felt, the whole thing was just an even playing field all the way around. And it was so tight and really well written.
I think that's the Joker effect. Like I said, I think when you got material like that, when you decide and when you convince the studio is let me do it my way. Like I said, and I think because Joker did so well with that formula of, okay, let's leave it alone. Let's not interfere. Let's not make it a superhero film, because they have those. They have those films. They got Flash, they have Wonder Woman. So they actually have that covered, and they're okay. Like I said, they're DC's in a unique position where they can now experiment with some of this, where I think Marvel is tied into, like, they're kind of in their universe and they're not going to get out, where DC now has this opportunity to explore some darker themes and more serious subject matter, like Eric said. And this was treated much like a drama, much like a Fincher film or any serious film of that genre of crime drama. That's straight up what it was. It wasn't the hammy, oh yeah, let's get someone in here to be over the top. Like I said, even Colin Farrell, even though he's in prosthetics, his character was still within that universe, and he didn't use the opportunity to, do something like off the wall.
And the fact that he wasn't in charge either. He was like the right-hand man to
mid-level.
So that was interesting too. It was a different take. Yeah. So yeah.
What's crazy to me, one last thought. What's crazy to me is that like everybody that I know that likes Batman has loved this movie. And I'm reading comments much against my better judgment. Everybody is either, nobody's ever like, yeah, it was okay. It's either like, this was the greatest thing ever, or this movie was absolute garbage. I walked out halfway through it. And this is one of those first movies where I'm like, I don't understand that criticism. Like, I walked out halfway through it, or this is absolute, like, I can't imagine where these people, I keep hearing people saying that it's the woke Batman. I have no idea what that means. Like, I've seen 10 or 15 people say that it's the woke version of Batman. I have no idea what they're talking about. How is this woke? I don't this is the first time I've watched a movie where I'm reading criticism and I'm like, did I see the same movie? Like, did you see, like, were they missing a reel or something? Like, what are you, it freaks me out how much people don't like this movie. I just, it was an extraordinary film. But as soon as from the get-go, like, it didn't have to sell me on anything. Like, from the jump, it was kind of like, I'm here, which as we wind down, it's going to lead to a question that I saved. I was going to ask it in the beginning, but I think it's better now to ask it. Yeah.
Is how does this fit in? Because there's a Flash film coming out, right? The Flash, and Michael Keaton is returning as Batman. How does this fit into that? And now, are you excited for that, or is that now like, oh, okay, we saw this with Spider-Man already. We saw all the retro we saw them all together. We saw the old Spider-Man together. Now with seeing Batman like this and seeing what Batman could be, or what you've enjoyed so much, we're going to be seeing Michael Keaton in a little while. Yeah. Your thoughts, Andy?
I think that it's probably a huge cheat, and it's probably the cheap way to go, but the multiverse plot thing that they've got going on Marvel and DC now is brilliant, because you can step on each other's toes and it won't matter. There's no through line Marvel thing where you're going to ruin a previous movie, or even Star Wars by having a sequel ruin previous movies or any of that stuff. This is totally separate universes where it's almost like checking in like on a different version of that. It's not like, this is not going to ruin Robert Pattinson's Batman. Like, this is a perfect story. It's here, whatever. And if what would happen is like, what would suck is if Michael Keaton shows up in this Batman's movie, so but if he shows up in the Flash, it's like, he's
going to get the crap punched out of him if he does.
Yeah. So it to me, it feels like it's like TV versus, it's like the Flash TV show versus the Flash in the movie. It just feels like two different things and two different theme feels and stuff. I think there's room for both.
What do you think, Eric? Gimmick?
I
at this point, I mean, we, like I said, No Way Home kind of already beat everybody to the party, right? They got their first to the dance.
Pandemic. I don't know if the Flashpoint thing was delayed because of the COVID or whatever. I'm assuming that it was. I think it should have been out, I think, at this point. But is it not part of the Snyderverse though? I mean, it's Ezra Miller, part of the Justice League.
Yeah.
So it's part of, right. So I mean, it's just a continuation of that. I mean, because we have 2 Wonder Woman films. We have.
So, but are you okay with Keaton? Like, is that going to kind of be like, I want Pattinson now. It's kind of like, I was excited.
Because I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it for the novelty of it. I'm going to see it as its own thing. Like,
now you just said something important. You're going to see it for the novelty of it.
Because it's I'm not going to take. I mean, I don't. That's how I felt about No Way Home. I have to see it again, to be honest. I mean, I everybody's kind of raving about it. For some reason, I didn't seem to. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't as excited as everybody else seems to be about it. To me, I liked Into the Spider-Verse much more. I thought that was fresh. Even though it's an animated film, I thought it was fresh. It was original. It was absolutely stunning. The animation was unlike anything I had seen.
Yeah.
The story was great. And yeah, I mean, they just bringing in all those different versions. I thought that in itself might be part of the multiverse of MCU, bringing in an animated Miles Morales to the table. And that would, to me, that would have been even cooler is to show an animated version of Spider-Man coming into a live action film. Let's go there. Like, let's push the envelope more.
Would they be calling that Who Framed Peter Parker?
Right? I mean, because that's what they're kind of alluding to, that this is just another universe of Marvel. Like, this is another version of, because we had two different versions of Peter Parker there as well. The older Peter Parker, so this to me, it's already, the multiverse was already started with that film. Well, so to do a live action version of that was like, okay, I didn't quite get the point of doing it that way.
Probably more of a nostalgia thing. It brought in all the fans from all the different films, regardless. Everybody was an
like
MCU.
I said, I enjoyed it, but I think like a Flashpoint. I know my son Jake. He loves the Flash. He loves that story because we've seen that in an animated version in the comic, of course, but. So I mean, to see Keaton again as Batman, why not?
Let me throw one thing in really quick about Keaton. Before the Snyderverse happened, there was somebody said something on Twitter and it blew up. It might have been right around the Snyderverse starting or something like that. There used to be a cartoon called Batman Beyond where Bruce Wayne,
Terry McGinnis,
Bruce Wayne is old and decrepit, but he's like now he's helping a new Batman out in the future. It's in the future. He's old and whatever. Somebody wrote on Twitter, like, okay, hear me out. Batman Beyond, but Michael Keaton is Bruce Wayne, old man Bruce Wayne. Everybody lost their crap because I remember thinking that would be the coolest thing in the world. Like, he's come and gone. Keaton's older now, but everybody still loves him and all that stuff. To have him come back as old man Bruce Wayne, crotchety, whatever, that was like the beginning. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. I loved that idea, and then it's kind of morphed into this, whatever, and then he's kind of coming back as Batman in the this Flash movie and stuff. So it's kind of a watered down version of that idea. So I like the idea of him coming back and he's older and maybe falling apart or something like that because he's been through it. But I just remember getting really excited about it like 5 years ago, and now it's kind of like, it's gonna be cool. It'd be cool to see him. It's going to be cool to see him in the costume again and stuff. But we'll see.
Maybe they're just going to flip the script and he's going to be the Vulture.
Well, I don't understand that in itself. Like, how is he going to show up in Morbius?
In Morbius, I don't know. The multiverse is fractured at this point. And that is a story for another time. Let's start to tie this up. If you had to pick, Andy, if you had to pick one scene to convince somebody to go see this film, what would it be?
The scene where Batman shows up to the crime scene in the beginning of the movie with the music, choice. Him just kind of thudding in, the cops looking at him like, why'd you bring this freak here? And he doesn't even pay attention. He's just scanning the crime scene, he's observing. He's not, like I said earlier, he's not scowling. He's not being all emo. He's just a cop. But he's 7 feet tall, and there's even a scene where like one of the cops like walks around him like, excuse me, it's just the mood of the music and everything else. We've never seen that before.
That's a good choice.
We've never seen that version of Batman before. I thought it was wonderful.
Eric, what do you think?
Well, that and the scene where he, like we talked about, when he comes out of the dark in the tunnel with the gang, and he just walks right up to the guy and he just starts pummeling the guy, and he's just doing this. And
I'm good. That was Andy kind of took Andy kind of took the best scene. I think we probably would have all chose that if we went first. What do you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean,
you know what? Then I'm going to go with another one because it actually was I think a turning point for the character, and it was at the very end. when the Gotham Square Garden,
I know
Gotham Square Garden is flooding, and he made the choice between letting go of vengeance and becoming someone who helps people.
Yeah.
Because in that whole film, his whole thing, he wasn't there to help anybody. He was never there to save lives. His thing was always about vengeance and just kind of exercising his demons. But then at the end of the film, that change happens when the mayor, she got like shot and they're all like underneath all the grating and everything, and he decides to go over and kind of start helping people instead and lead them all out with the flare. And you see all the people kind of, it's a weird shot from overhead. It almost looks like a stream of fish, or just, you don't know what it is when
it was gorgeous.
He's kind of leading them through. And that was the point where he kind of like was able to let go of that whole vengeance thing and kind of understand that doing what he's doing is not just about that there is something more to it. And that might be a solution as well, that what he was doing wasn't the only solution. So I kind of like that he kind of came to that as well, that he's not just, I'm just going to destroy everything. It's like, well, no, there's actually a little bit more to this than I thought. I can't just continue being that person, which was kind of neat. I kind of enjoyed that at the end where he's kind of came to that realization, and he's like, yeah, okay, maybe we can help, maybe we can't, but he was able to kind of reconcile a lot of that stuff in his head.
And there's a couple of the tender moments in the film too, where the sort of like where he's the night shift is over, right? He's always in that same spot, standing in that wherever that building was. And then sometimes he's talking to Selena, and it's like you see the sunrise as he's talking to her. That was great too, because he's like, that he's off duty, as it were. Like he's like, it's almost like a vampire. Like he's like, the sun is rising. I'm not going to be hanging around here. I always thought that was interesting, and it happens a couple of times in the film.
Yeah.
Where you see the light kind of starting to creep through, which I thought was really, I would have liked to have seen it done like more in full time, where it gets progressively lighter and lighter. I was hoping to see that, but it, just,
they filmed that in the volume,
cool,
like the volume. That was an actual set with a screen behind them. That wasn't a
like they did in Mandalorian.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah.
I have one last question for you both.
Sure.
The Batman or Dark Knight?
The Batman for me, for sure.
The Dark Knight, meaning the second film?
Yep. Heath Ledger.
Oh. Well, this is fresh in my mind, right? And it's new. And of course we're excited. Well, I don't know. I'm going to think overall, I think people are going to get the impression we really didn't care for this film.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what.
I want to make sure we gave the right impression, but much like when the Nolan stuff came out, everybody was like, "Oh, the Burton stuff is tame, right?" Or it's So we have just witnessed that new evolution, right? We kind of got through the Affleck stuff, which was kind of he didn't get his due anyway. He didn't get a full film. He was just kind of like a supporting character, but we got this, and it's new and exciting, and it's kind of realistic. So. Yeah, if you're going to ask me, if you're going to say which one do you want to watch again right now, I'd say the Batman.
I wish there was a way, technology that probably will be in the future, where I could put Robert Pattinson's Batman in The Dark Knight. It would be a perfect movie. Mm-hmm. The only problem I have with The Dark Knight is Christian Bale, and I like Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
you've got a big problem.
Every scene.
Well, I always said it. I said it from. I mean, like I never. That's what for me kept The Dark Knight. A couple of like everybody was like raving about it.
I
realized that the movie is about the villains. It's not about Batman. So to me, Nolan is sort of telling it's a more esoteric story about the White Knight, which is Harvey Dent, and I get
the nature of good and evil.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is all.
And for me, the Dark Knight is just too many day shots. Like I love the darkness. I love Batman at night. That's the way it should be.
You've got it. You've got it in the Batman. So
yes, you do.
That is going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Andy. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Go check out Andy's Instagram. He is at Andrew Cremines Art on Instagram. We're going to drop a link in the show notes. You've got to go check out his art. Is absolutely fantastic. We are so grateful that he has taken time out of his schedule to talk about this great film with us. You can find us on social media. You can let us know. Did you really think, did you get the impression we didn't care for this film? Let us know if that came through. You can do that on 3324 Podcast at Instagram and Facebook. If you want to tweet, I'm there sometimes as well. You can do that at 3324p. Full-length episodes come out every Thursday. We've got shorter, little nibbly nugget-style bites of information that come out every Monday as well. And that's going to do it for us. So go check out the Batman. We've done the spoilers, but if you're listening to this a year from now, you've already seen it and you're going to enjoy it as well. So for Eric, for Andy, this has been Dean, asking you to please be kind and rewind.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Cooper. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.